Hey everyone, Ryan here, and 2022 is coming to a close, which means it's time to rank every LEGO Star Wars 2022 set from worst to first to find out what the best LEGO Star Wars set released this year was. Certainly let me know your opinions in the comment section below after watching, and I gotta say up front here, this was one of the hardest years for me to rank of LEGO Star Wars ever. There were 27 sets, plus a polybag, which I didn't count for this video, but I had a lot of trouble really deciding whether something was worse or not because there were so many sets that have like a really good build and then terrible looking minifigs, or really good minifigs and terrible looking builds. So this list is honestly kind of all over the place. I'm sure a lot of you guys will disagree here, but we gotta get into it with the worst set of 2022, in my opinion, number 27 here, the Juniors, aka 4+ ATST on Endor. This one is egregiously overpriced. 87 pieces for $35 is not a deal breaker, honestly. Price per piece doesn't matter to me at all, but when you just pick up the box in the store and you feel how light it is, you can immediately tell it's not worth $35. And if you really want me to chop it up a little bit differently for you, you have 2 microfighters and a polybag build, which added up together is worth $25, which to me would be the absolute maximum price for this set. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend anyone pay a penny over 20 though. And no, just because it's made for 4-year-olds doesn't mean it's actually a good set in disguise. It is awful and it is terribly overpriced, but it actually does have good minifigs, which is the silver lining if you want to call it that. The next worst set for 2022 for me is the Microfighter Razor Crest. The build isn't all that inspiring, but even worse here is the Mandalorian minifigure. They really dropped the ball here, electing not to include the face print for Mando. It was later included in the summer wave, but I really felt like it could have fit into this set here at $10, and they just completely neglected to do that. The Microfighter isn't all bad though. It does have a pretty cool feature on the backside where the loading ramp can drop down. You know, obviously you can't use it because it's so small, but it's cool that it's there. Mostly I'm not impressed with the quality of the print for the Mandalorian helmet in this set. It is drastically shifted down from what is advertised to you, and that is something I'm just not going to be standing for with LEGO Star Wars. They increase prices this year and decrease quality. You just have to call them out on that, you know? Next up is the Dark Trooper helmet, which has a couple of issues. One, it breaks LEGO Star Wars' own self-imposed rule of helmets only for the helmet series. They were asked if they would make a C-3PO helmet, and they said, no, it's not a helmet. Neither is the Dark Trooper, but they made it anyway. And for good reason, the Dark Trooper is very cool and they should be making stuff like this. However, only half of this helmet is cool to me. The bottom half, basically anything under the eyebrows. The top half just doesn't fit without having that smooth, shiny top to it like the actual Dark Trooper has in Universe. With the Lego studs, I just don't think it looks good at all. So for that reason, this one is pretty far down here on the list. Next up, we have the Hoth Rebel minifig pack. It's a fine minifig pack and for $15 provides decent value. It is basically what we see as a result of shrinkflation for LEGO Star Wars though, where previously we would have got a battle pack with 4 minifigs in a build for $15. Now we get a minifig pack with 3 minifigs and a build for $15. So the value isn't quite there either to me, but still a nice minifig pack with quality figs. Next up we have the Mandalorian and Beskar Armor's helmet, and this one has a couple of things that are good, a couple of things that are bad. I do really like the look of the helmet. I think for a casual LEGO Star Wars fan, this is a perfect helmet that you can't go wrong with and you can really enjoy on your display. For someone that obviously looks at things a little bit deeper, not so much. So the two things I don't love about it is that it does integrate some of the silver that you would see from Mando and Beskar, but it's kind of like a half measure. The silver is only kind of half baked into there on a few different strips, and then you have the studs kind of showing too, which gives it that LEGO look that they definitely are going for, but ultimately creates a product that looks a little bit iffy depending on your personal taste, and certainly not for my personal taste in this case. And the other thing I don't love about it is like the vertical strip on the front of the helmet is way too wide. It's supposed to be thinner than what we see on Boba Fett's helmet, but the LEGO helmets have it backwards where Mando is a bit thicker there and Boba Fett is a bit thinner. So that's another thing I don't love about this one and why I put it so low on the list. But I could see some people putting it a lot higher. It's not a bad helmet set. It just isn't as good as the other sets released this year. The set that for the first half of the year received the most hate was Boba Fett's Palace. 732 pieces for $100 didn't sit well with a lot of people, but worse than that for me was just a generally ugly build, a build that strayed away from what we saw in 2012, a major step back in a lot of ways. Now, of course, this one is taking a huge playset approach, but that doesn't mean it doesn't look ugly from certain angles. However, I think it does have some redeeming attributes, including the number of minifigs. 7 minifigs in a $100 LEGO Star Wars set is almost unheard of at this point. Haven't seen that in a long time, and it was something I really liked about this set. As far as the quality of the minifigs go, 5 of the 7 minifigs in this set I think are fantastic. I think you get great figures from 5 of them, and then the Fennec Shand hairpiece I'm not a big fan of, and certainly the Book of Boba Fett here with the mismatched armor color. Don't love that either, but still decent minifigs for a lot of people, and certainly for kids will go over well. But again, I'm more of a collector aspect and want things to be accurate, and in this case with Boba Fett especially, just not the case. I think the absolute highlight of this set though is the throne area where Bib Fortuna is sitting. They have the Rancors on the front of the seat, and then you've got this nice kind of strip of detail at the back. It's just a beautiful looking throne, and something that I almost wish they released as its own $10 set, because it would make a fantastic small little build that you could pick up a minifig in. Nothing over the top, but just a neat little set on its own, obviously included with the bigger palace in this case. But ultimately I couldn't find myself wanting to put it any higher on the list, although I don't think it's quite as bad as some people say, mainly saved by those minifigs and that small throne section. Now these next couple sets I had a lot of trouble placing. On one hand, I wanted to put them a lot higher than I ended up putting them, but ultimately they have pretty glaring flaws, whereas a lot of other sets that you'll see later on in the list don't have any glaring flaws. And so it's hard for me to say that a set like the Republic Fighter Tank with a giant baby bump on the front is better than a set like Mando's N1 Starfighter. So with that in mind, the next set is obviously the Republic Fighter Tank, and the minifigs for this set at a $40 set, 6 figures, is incredible. 2 battle droids, not really minifigs, but characters nonetheless included. And then we have an awesome Mace Windu, better than the Mace Windu we got in a UCS gunship for $350, just a $40 set here. He's got arm printing based on the Clone Wars. It looks so good here. I love this Mace Windu. And then our clone troopers here, we get a 187th Commander with kind of the airborne helmet. It looks really great. It's based off a Hasbro action figure from back in the day, and so are the 187th troopers. So these aren't the canon 187th troopers, which was an interesting angle for LEGO to take. I do think that purple clones go way better with Mace Windu than the canon version of 187th troops, so I do like what LEGO did here. And ultimately, this is absolutely a set to buy for the figures, and they know that. That's why they priced it at 40 bucks. That's why they didn't just make it a cheap $20 battle pack, because they knew they could get people to buy this at a $40 price as if it were a battle pack, and I'm certainly one of those suckers. Although I did end up selling off my extra Mace Windu's, Commanders, and Fighter Tanks, just keeping those 2 regular purple clones for the army there. But yeah, great army builder here at 40 bucks. Just unfortunately a pretty ugly one as far as the Fighter Tank goes. It's the worst of the 3 Fighter Tank builds. Now for the next set on our list, we have a set that is basically the opposite situation of the Fighter Tank. We have a fantastic build in the ATTE, the best ATTE LEGO has ever made, bar none. It's got fantastic interior detail with plenty of seating for your minifigs. They don't gimp out on that front section like they did in 2013, where you could barely even fit a flickfire missile in there. The cockpit is beautifully designed. The feet got redesigned for this one, so they look significantly different than what we saw in years past. Of course, the play handle to be able to pick the thing up and just move it whenever you want is a great thing that's been built into the last few ATTs, but I think perfected here in this case. However, when it comes to minifigs, LEGO dropped the ball. And that does seem to be the case with some of these prequel sets more so than anything else, but in this particular case, it's egregious. It's false advertising, and it's just stupid to me. Now, we can't forget they did make a Phase 2 Cody for this specific set. That's something fans have been asking for, and you gotta give credit where credit's due. The Phase 2 Cody minifig actually turned out pretty dang good here. The other 4 clone troopers in the set, not so much, very unfortunately. They do have helmet holes, which is nice. However, they don't make use of them, and the helmet holes in this particular case are basically double stacked. So instead of just having helmet holes, they have the spot for the helmet holes molded into the clone helmet mold, and then they have a spot above that where the actual hole is put into the mold. So it looks awful from most angles, and certainly when not filled in, and it looks so bad that I've just gone and sold off a lot of my extras that I've gotten because I just don't think they're worth having in my clone army. And then on top of that, and I honestly don't know which one is worse, the prints for the 212 helmets have all been terribly misprinted. LEGO has come out and said that it's the way they intended them to be, but the way they intended them to be is terribly inaccurate. It just looks awful to begin with. It's not the way it's advertised on the box, And they already made these figures in 2014 and they looked perfectly fine. Why does it have to look worse now? It doesn't make any sense. For $140, it is completely unacceptable. And, you know, if we had helmets that looked good and proper, this set would be a lot higher on the list, but unfortunately, we don't. Now, of course, the other glaring issue here in this set is the Spider Droid. This is a Revenge of the Sith Utapau set. The Spider Droid not on Utapau. Crab Droids were on Utapau. LEGO Star Wars designers, when questioned as to why they included a Spider Droid instead of a Crab Droid, quote unquote, we didn't even consider it. Think of this like LEGO putting a probe droid on Tatooine. They would never do that, but when it comes to the prequels, yeah, screw it, who cares? We won't even think about it. We'll just throw in whatever we want. Like, that's the type of mindset we have with sets like this, and it's really unfortunate because we're so close to perfection, you know? I just listed like 3 little things. You change all that, you got a perfect set. Can't have that though. Our next set is the other minifigure accessory pack from 2022, and this is the 40558 Clone Command Station. Again, for 15 bucks with 66 pieces. It provides decent value, but again, is a victim of shrinkflation here, getting only 3 minifigs for 15 versus the 4 you would have gotten in a battle pack just a year prior for 15, so it kind of sucks there. But the Clone Troopers do look really good despite having some slight inaccuracies, but we won't bother with that here. You get 2 regulars and then 1 Clone Commander, which in a vacuum, UCS Republic Gunship from 2021 aside, is a good figure for this particular set. But outside of a vacuum, with the UCS Gunship in mind, and the fact that the same figure ended up coming on an advent calendar, I would have certainly preferred a different color of Episode 2 Clone Trooper, be it the olive green, maroon, red, or light blue that they have done previously in the 2013 clone style. I wish we would have gotten an updated version of that in this set in particular, and it certainly would have put this set way higher if we had something different here. As far as the builds go, this set somehow made me like a weapons rack. I used to hate the weapons racks in the advent calendars that they would put in. I just thought they were all terrible and lazy throw-ins, but in this set, it actually feels like something of substance. And then the Clone Command Station, while small, is a nice accessory build, basically better than another speeder you would get in a normal battle pack or something. So I definitely appreciated that in this particular case. But ultimately, this set stays kind of low on the list because it's one of 3 sets with the same exact yellow Clone Trooper. When in almost every other case with modern LEGO Star Wars Clone Troopers, they're only coming in 1 set. It just doesn't make sense here. It should have been something different. Our next set is the Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Darth Vader duel set from the Kenobi show, which, you know, I have mixed feelings on. But as far as this set goes, I think a lot of fans would have it much lower than I have it on my personal list here. However, it's a set that I actually really like, and I get it. It's a gray slab. There's not a whole lot going on there, but I really think when you add the minifigures onto this particular set for your display, it actually turns into a pretty nice dynamic display piece, having Darth Vader and Obi-Wan duel it out while Ned B and Tala are just kind of standing around in different places, and then you can pour some of the lava rocks over the terrain to kind of give it a little bit of color. I think there is definitely some good to this set at the $50 price tag, plus you're getting that Darth Vader with the arm printing, Ned B being maybe the best minifig of the year, just excellent detail, perfect execution. I definitely understand why a lot of people don't like this set, and it's certainly not like a top 5 or 10 set of the year, but I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people want you to think. Next up, one that many people would say is overpriced is the Justifier. Insert is the price justified joke for 1,022 pieces. However, I think it is. I think this is a great model. I think it is a perfect representation of the ship that we saw in the Bad Batch. I thought LEGO would do this much smaller when it got rumored, and it just turned out to be the behemoth set of the year, which is kind of crazy to me. But that Toto 360 and Cad Bane combo of minifigs is awesome. Tack on Hunter and Fennec Shand, kind of returning from other sets, and then the other new minifig in this set is Omega, the one set she comes in here, and she looks great. And overall, with the 5 minifigs, you have perfect execution. No, again, like, reason this set I think is better than a set like the ATT, I think it's an equally very good build. And the minifigs have no flaws, right? You look at a set like the ATT with the misprints and the holes, and then you look at a set like this where you just can't say anything bad about it. And that's just where I wish LEGO Star Wars would put themselves in a position to be more often, where you can't have anything bad to say. I mean, obviously the price on this one a lot of people would argue with, but I still think it's a fantastic set. You have the jail holding cell for Omega in the back. You have a great cockpit area for Cad Bane and Toto 360 to sit around in. And then the main play function on this one is the big hammer at the back, which when you lift the ship up, you can pretty easily push up and into vertical position. And then when you do that, you actually lift up the landing gear too. So it's got some great features baked in like that you just don't see on a lot of smaller ships. Next up for $30, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi's Jedi Starfighter from episode 2. Great Obi-Wan minifigure. For the first time ever, Taun We, and she looks amazing. It's awesome to finally have a Kaminoan in a LEGO Star Wars set. And the real gripe I have here is the R4 astromech droid. He doesn't have a back print for his torso. That's something they introduced a little earlier in 2022 on a couple of R2-D2 minifigs for the 18 plus lineup. And then R4 here didn't quite receive the same treatment. He just got a blank back. So I felt a little bit gypped by that, but otherwise a perfect minifig selection for a $30 set like this. And then as far as Obi-Wan Starfighter goes, I think it's a great looking Starfighter. I think a lot of people will be able to enjoy it. However, I do have a couple of gripes. There are some pretty distinct gaps between the main white section of the ship and then the wings. I didn't really love that. And then what I like even less, the more I look at it, you kind of have this giant beer belly or big lump on top of the ship. It's supposed to be sleek, but because they want to include this feature where you can take R4's head off and then pop it onto the swivel piece, and then you can take his body and put it into the belly of the ship, well, you have to raise that ship up a lot so that you can actually fit him in there. And unfortunately, it creates something that looks a little bit less accurate than I would like, and certainly less visually appealing than I would like. So that's my biggest gripe with the set. A really good pickup for $30 for the minifigs alone. The ship looks fine if you don't think about it too much. Cracking our top 15 is the Death Star Trash Compactor, which has kind of a hidden feature on the back. We'll get to that in a second, but you have 4 minifigs up front with Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Chewbacca all stuck in the trash compactor. That trash compactor can close, which is really awesome. So they actually set everything up in that so that you can close both sides of it, and it just kind of goes together perfectly. I love the murky water look to the bottom floor of the trash compactor, and just all the trash in there I think looks generally very good. And then flipping the model around, you'll find your 2 extra characters, C-3PO and R2-D2, with a back print. Like I said earlier, astromech droids getting back prints for the first time ever this year, and they are at like the control panel for the Death Star Trash Compactor, trying to stop it from closing on their friends, which is an amazing little hidden feature. Not something you can really even see when you have this on display properly either, though. Speaking of display, there is really only one way to display this, though, and that's my biggest gripe with it, and that's wide open, because I think once you close it, it looks awful. Like, you just have this really weird flooring, and just having the walls closed looks weird to me. Like, it looks nice in the movie, obviously, but as a Lego set, I really think you can only display it open. Even though the function of it closing is nice, it's just something that doesn't look good for display. So I don't know. It's cool that this set exists, but it's definitely not my favorite of the year. The $60 Mandalorians N1 Starfighter is a great set here with Pelimoto for the first time. We have a BD unit as well. Of course, we would later get BD1 in the BD1 set that's actually coming up. Then we have our Mandalorian in Beskar armor and Grogu. A great selection of figures, and unfortunately, still no molded Darksaber in the great year of our Lord 2022. What are they doing? Anyway, for the build itself, I think it does a good job of representing the Starfighter. A lot of people wanted them to make this all chromed out, and I just never saw that as a realistic possibility, and of course it wasn't, and they just went with dark gray, light gray, and kind of chromy gray on the side of the engines to a degree. My favorite part of the set, though, is where you can put Grogu in his little dome at the back. I just think it's the cutest thing and a very fun feature to have in the set. I do wish there was a little bit more for Pelimoto as far as a build goes, maybe part of her like mechanics area, whatever you want to call it, just something more for her, but ultimately it's a little bit lacking there to me for $60. But still, very cool set, one that I think they did nicely. The Hoth AT-ST was a surprise yet fantastic addition to the 2022 lineup, including a completely redesigned probe droid, which looks awesome. And then as far as the Hoth AT-ST goes, it provides a very different design than a lot of the AT-STs we've seen in years past. A bit taller, a bit weirder looking, but it's fun to have something different every once in a while, and this is about as perfect as LEGO Star Wars sets come. It's perfectly designed, no real flaws, minifigures have great execution. It's a fun playset for kids. You can't go wrong with it for your display alongside your UCS AT-AT, and you can't go wrong with it as a gift for kids. Like, it's one of those things that I really like about LEGO Star Wars here. Even though it is like barely seen in the background in the Battle of Hoth, so most people probably didn't even know the Hoth AT-ST was different to begin with, but it's still cool that they made it. The next set on this list is Luke Skywalker's Red 5 X-Wing helmet, and I think this is the best helmet set of the year. I definitely think there are people out there that would say the Mandalorian helmet is better and they don't like this open concept for Luke's helmet, but Dude, this one looks so good. The white and the black contrast very nicely to begin with, but then you get that nice bit of orange for the goggles or visor area. That looks awesome. And then as far as the striping on top goes with the printed bricks, now there are some stickers for kind of the cautionary striping at the front, but a lot of printed bricks going down the spine of the helmet. They look awesome. And then we have the 2 Rebel insignias on there. I just think it's all around a fantastic helmet set, and I really hope they do more in a similar vein to it, because they have done some helmet sets from other themes like Batman, where it's like this weird concept where you kind of have the face in there and it looks weird, but with this one they just kind of left it empty, and I think it worked perfectly, and so hopefully they do more like it. The Death Star Trench Run is a small but mighty set. I think it's a fantastic open concept take on the trench run. I do kind of wish it was an actual trench, but as far as displaying the set goes, you definitely have to leave one side open. The black borders always hit on these diorama sets, and especially with the color difference between light gray and black here, I think it looks especially good. I also really like the way that some of the Death Star Trench's greebling kind of spills over onto the black border. It makes the model feel a lot less stiff than I think it would otherwise. I think they did a great job with the mini micro models in this set as well, using printed elements for R2-D2 on top of the X-Wing, as well as the cockpit pieces for the TIE Fighters and Vader's TIE. Overall, a fantastic set and decent value at $60, although they did increase the price to $70, but you can get it on sale. Cracking the top 10 is our buildable BD1, includes a BD1 minifigure as well as a display plaque, and this is a perfect set. If you like Jedi Fallen Order or BD1 in general, there is no reason not to buy this. It literally has nothing wrong with it. It's a great display model. It has some very fun functionality to it, including swiveling the head, moving the antennas forward or backwards, and of course the legs have some good range of motion as well. So I think this is a fantastic set for $100. Great display piece and a decent playset, although I certainly wouldn't recommend buying it as one. The Ambush on Ferrix is another very well executed set for 2022. It does have one thing I'll talk about in a second that I wish they had done a little bit better, but the speeder for Luthen and Andor to ride on, just like they do in the show, is great looking. The mobile tac pod shares some resemblance to a Republic gunship, and basically a chubby version of that, and it looks awesome. I love the gray color for it. I think the angles that the designers did on the front of the ship look amazing. They all come together so perfectly. The cockpit piece uses what is essentially like a Speed Champion's car piece and looks awesome. Just love the curvature of it and the great print on there. The cockpit inside has some nice detail for your control panel, and then you actually have a lot of seating inside, and that's kind of where I feel like this set leaves a little bit to be desired, as you only get one minifig for the tac pod with Cyril. Definitely could have used one or two of the other corpos for the show, especially at the $70 price tag. It definitely feels like a set that should have 4 minifigs minimum. Lego Star Wars tends to be on the lower end of minifigs per dollar, unfortunately, and this is just another case where that holds true. But outside of missing one minifig, I think it's honestly a perfect set. The advent calendar comes in at number 8 this year because I think it might be the best advent calendar they've ever made. There are some real highlights here. The Republic gunship and Bad Batch shuttle from the Clone Wars are fantastic. We have the B-Wing and TIE Interceptor for Return of the Jedi. We have a great turret from the Battle of Hoth, as well as one of the few builds that can actually interact with minifigs in an advent calendar with the Wampa Cave, where you can actually hang Luke upside down inside of it and even has the Wampa's little bone. We have the Death Star escape set miniaturized for this advent calendar with a micro mouse droid, which is really funny to see. And then as far as festive minifigs go, these are some of the best we've seen. We have Holiday Sweater C-3PO with R2-D2 on his holiday sweater. We have Santa Claus Gonk Droid, which is maybe the best Gonk Droid ever. Well, 2005 Gonk Droid was amazing as well, but this Gonk Droid's very good too. And then we have the Darth Vader on the beach with a great beach print that has like TIE Fighters printed onto it with the Death Star as the sun, like very fun details there. And then he also has a sandcastle. It's ironic, but very cool to have in this advent calendar. So I think just all around, this is the best advent calendar they have ever made, but could have used a different color clone. At number 7 is the May 4th promo, the Lars Family Homestead Kitchen. A wonderful promo, one of the most fun builds I've had this year for Lego Star Wars, with great detail, including a micro Luke's land speeder, some blue milk, among other things. Beautiful design in general. And then we have the Aunt Beru minifigure for the first time. So this set really does combine the best of both worlds for May 4th promos, with both a build and a minifigure, and it's like, you can't go wrong with that. Everyone's gonna love that sort of thing, and especially when it's a minifig we have never had before. everyone's gonna love it, you know? So hopefully more stuff like this going forward. I certainly love this one. It's a 10 out of 10 promo to me, and something I just really hope continues in the future. At number 6, the Snow Trooper Battle Pack. After a 1-year hiatus in 2021, 2022 brought LEGO Star Wars Battle Packs back, unfortunately at a higher price of $20, which really does suck, but they at least made a good battle pack, you know? You got a hot scout trooper and then 3 regular snow troopers, so it was perfect for army building. It had a speeder bike, which integrated perfectly with the UCS AT-AT. It was the same design as the one we saw in the UCS AT-AT, except one piece was flipped, which was kind of odd. And then the turret for this thing was nice. It did have a stud shooter on top, but the minifigs themselves didn't have stud shooters, which I think a lot of people appreciated. And then you kind of got this nice snowbank for defense, or kind of a trench, I guess, that one of the snow troopers is hiding in there. So I think it's a fantastic battle pack with 3 different fun builds and 4 awesome minifigs. The only downside I've seen some people have is that the printed waist capes on the snowtroopers aren't what they'd prefer. They would want the physical ones, and I kind of agree. The minifigs in this set, or at least the snowtroopers, don't need to sit anywhere, and therefore could certainly have physical waist cape pieces, but instead LEGO opted for what we can assume is the cheaper option as printed waist capes. So yeah, very unfortunate there, but otherwise a fantastic battle pack, and hopefully they keep this concept for battle packs going forward, because this is awesome. Cracking our top 5 is the Yoda's Hut diorama, including Yoda, Luke Skywalker from Dagobah, and a muddied up R2-D2 that does also have a back print. It has the X-Wing wing built into the set. That's all you get of the X-Wing. I do wish there was a bit more of it there, but I think it's plenty. The general design of the Yoda's Hut is unlike anything we had ever seen before too, with just 2 previous playsets essentially that looked way different than what we see here. What we see here is much smaller and more smooth than the other sets. I really like and appreciate that. This set, unlike the Death Star Trench Run, doesn't really have a lot of overflow as far as pieces flowing over the border for the diorama, but I think it does work here. It's just a different vibe, and it fits nicely without pieces kind of falling off the edge like on the Death Star Trench Run. As far as the cramped interior of Yoda's hut goes, it's really nice. You have a small pauldron for cooking stuff, and then there's even smoke coming out of the side of one of the trees. We also have his lightsaber hidden up in there, and then we also have a small bed for Yoda to lay on. So I think it's a fun set, a beautiful display piece, and at its original retail price of $80, I thought was a very fair price. They did later increase the price $10 to $90. Still a good price, but definitely one you should buy on sale if you plan on picking it up. The UCS Luke's Landspeeder was bound to happen eventually, and 2022 turned out to be the year. This was perfectly executed in every way. We have a beautiful color scheme for it with that kind of salmon tan color and then a very nice dark red. The windshield piece was perfectly designed for this as well, and then you have great looking engines. There's no real functionality. It's a UCS display ship. It's not really going to do anything for you here, but it does look awesome for fans of the classic Star Wars vehicle that might not want one of the tiny ones that they've released 10 of. As far as minifigs go, we get a Luke Skywalker minifig, which is not all too inspiring. It's the same old, but the C-3PO turned out to be an exclusive minifig here with a special dual molded silver, or of course really light gray leg, something that you might not notice in the original trilogy, but he definitely does have half of his right leg silver. So it was really cool to see them do something special again for UCS set minifigs for 2022 with the UCS Luke's Landspeeder. And for that original retail price of $200, it fit right into the mold that LEGO Star Wars has had with these UCS ship sets for the past like 5 to 10 years, and it's definitely one of the better ones. Just might not be everyone's favorite ship. The $30 Dark Trooper attack with Luke Skywalker and 3 Dark Troopers is the perfect playset and army builder and display set. It does a lot of things very well. It has a great function where Luke Skywalker can essentially come down the elevator, and then the elevator turns around to reveal Luke Skywalker, and then you can even have him force push one of the Dark Troopers. There's like a thing you can pull back on to make the Dark Trooper fly back. The interior of this thing is nice. It definitely is a little bit small, but for $30, you can't really expect too much. I did actually do a rebuild of this one where I took like 4 or 5 and put them together, and it turned out fantastic. And some of y'all have even done that and tagged me in it, and I've seen what y'all have come up with, and it's just fantastic to see what you can do with more than one of these sets if you decide you want to army build some Dark Troopers to help recreate your scene from the end of Mandalorian Season 2. So this is a fantastic set, pretty much a 10 out of 10. Speaking of 10 out of 10s, the $100 Inquisitor Scythe transport ship from the Kenobi show is a perfect LEGO Star Wars set with 3 Inquisitors, although the Grand Inquisitor does look a little bit goofy, but that's just him from the show. It's a very accurate representation of him in the LEGO set. And then Kenobi, you have a great quartet of minifigs there, and then the Inquisitor Scythe transport is a awesome ship. They nailed the look of the thing. It looks awesome in black, and then that slight hint of red for the cockpit piece is fantastic. You have the wings that can fold down, of course. Your landing gear is stationary. It's not going to be folding up into the model like we see with the Justifier, but doesn't really need to here. It does have some spring-loaded shooters hidden under the wings too, which is nice. And then the interior of this thing is killer. You've got space for all 3 Inquisitors, plus plenty of space behind them with great sticker details for all of the control panels. And I really love the way you can recreate the way that the Inquisitors landed on Tatooine and then get off of their ship with the ramp at the very front of the ship right underneath the cockpit. It looks awesome. Great play functionality and great display set. It's really a 10 out of 10 set and really a must buy if you enjoyed Kenobi. Finally, at number 1, we have the UCS Razor Crest, 6,187 pieces for $600 and a behemoth model of the Razor Crest. This thing dwarfs what we saw in 2020 with the $130 Razor Crest. As far as minifigs go, it includes 4, 3 of which being exclusive as of the release of the set. You do have the Mandalorian in his Season 1 armor with arm printing, plus extra printing on the helmet that looks way better than what we were getting previously, especially with what we saw in sets like the Microfighter that I talked about earlier. You do have the Mithril, which is exclusive to the set, although I think he needed a custom molded head, not a printed head. I think he looks terrible. And when you look at a set like the Master Builder series Mos Eisley Cantina, where they did like 7 different alien molds, they couldn't have done one for the Mithril here. I guess a second one for the Mithril here, because they did do one for Queel, who is riding his blurg, which can also be put on the display stand, which is kind of cool. And then finally, we have Baby Yoda or Grogu in the pram. I think it's a really good selection of minifigs for feels like the right number, although you certainly could have had more because the set is minifig scale. It plays with minifigs. Externally, you couldn't really tell that because it's perfectly detailed. The only real flaw with the outside of this ship is the sticker to print coloration. Not something a lot of people might care too much about, but for $600, like, why not just print everything, you know? But it's a great, very well detailed model. You've got very sturdy landing gear. It doesn't fold up into the ship or anything. There is no flight mode for this thing because it's so big and heavy. It's a UCS set. You put it down and you display it. That's what you do with it. It does open up very nicely for the interior though. The cockpit just pops right off and you can place Mando and Grogu up there. Plenty of space for both characters, both in the front section and the rear section of that. There's a ladder leading to the main interior section, and in there you have the carbon freezing chamber where you can put the Mithril and then freeze him. You have a couple of minifigs already frozen in carbonite, which is amazing. You've got a weapons storage area inside, as well as armor from Boba Fett that Mando stole. So that's pretty cool to see here, and it's the accurate color for the armor in this particular set, which is nice. My favorite detail on the set, though, is the small baby on board sticker that you can see on top of the weapons rack. I think that is an amazingly fun detail. Everything basically opens up on this set, so you have your side loading ramps as well as the main loading ramp at the rear of the set, where you can actually take the blurg and have him walk up and into the Razor Crest and store him in there. So that's awesome. I really love UCS Razor Crest. I think it's one of the best UCS sets they have ever made. For $600, definitely an expensive one, but one worth the price in my eyes. So that is my list of every LEGO Star Wars 2022 set ranked from worst to first. If you enjoyed, hit the like button. If you think I'm wrong, let me know all about it in the comments section below. And subscribe if you're new here. See you in the next one. Peace out.